Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I got today's video idea from Annette from Annette's Makeup Corner. She had randomly selected a bunch of palettes from her collection and then went through them one by one and made the decision if it were to be lost from her collection, would she repurchase that palette? So I thought that would be fun, and I had my daughter randomly choose 10 palettes out of my collection. I don't even know which one she grabbed, so it's going to be new to me as well. And I'm going to look through them and decide, hey, I would repurchase or I would not repurchase based on personal preference and, how I feel about that palette. So if you would like to see any of that, then just don't go anywhere. If you're new to my channel, hey, my name's Rachel. I'm a homeschooling stay-at-home mom. I love to play with colorful eyeshadow. I did film this look, and I'll link it down below for you in the description box as soon as it's live. I typically upload at least 3 videos a week, all kinds of eyeshadow related content. So if you would like to color up your timeline a little bit, I hope you consider liking and subscribing. Okay, so I'm just gonna go through the pile. The first palette that she pulled is the turquoise palette from BH Cosmetics Birthstone series. This is turquoise for December. So the question, would I buy this palette again if I were to lose it? This is gonna be a hard video. Okay, so this is excellent quality. I love the color story. This yellow gold is fantastic. And I actually pre-filmed a video using this palette for December because it's December's palette, and I've been thinking about decluttering my Birthstone series palettes. However, after that video, I was like, can I declutter this palette? This is amazing. I think that at this point, if I lost it, I would not buy it again, but only because I do have a lot of these colors represented elsewhere in my collection. I would be able to recreate it pretty easily, except this gold, incredible, and I would certainly miss this gold. But if I lost the palette, I probably wouldn't get it again because there's always new exciting stuff coming on scene, and it's not really a staple in my collection. It's just a really good one. The next palette that she picked was the Lush Life palette from ColourPop. This palette has always been a favorite of mine. It has consistently ranked top 2 or 3 among my ColourPop rankings because it's awesome quality. I love the color story. It's unique, it's different. I hadn't seen anything like this before, and honestly, since this palette launched, I haven't seen anything else quite like it even since then. I mean, it's got a unique color story with these interesting teal shades of royal blue, lime green, and then we've got sort of corally, peachy red kinds of shades. It's just kind of a funky, unusual color story, and it's really good quality, and it still performs very nicely for me. So yes, if I were to lose this palette, the Lush Life palette from ColourPop, I would get it again. Okay, the next palette that she pulled is the Paradise Fallen palette from Ace Beauté. I actually recently did a video where I was talking about palettes I loved but, and this is one of the palettes that's featured in that video, where I really like the color story. I really like how it's a lot of beautiful purples, and then it has complementary colors. It's not just monochromatic, so you could go more neutral, you could go more light, cool tone with the silvers. You could add in purple if you want to, but you don't have to. It's a great color story. It's interesting, it's cool toned, it's very pretty and dynamic. My qualm with this palette is that these two shimmers kind of stink. And honestly, this is the new formulation from Ace Beauté, so I really expected that they would perform better because I know that when they reformulated their older palettes, people were just in love with the formula. But in my experience, these two shimmers are not very good. So no, if I lost this palette, I would not buy it again. Ooh, she pulled out the Orange Sorbet palette from the Sweet Shop series of BH Cosmetics. I just got this palette. This is one of the newest to my collection at the time of filming. And just so you know, I've been pre-filming a lot because I'm going to be going on vacation later in the year. So this video is going to be viewed in August probably, but I actually filmed it in June. Anyway, this palette was new in June, and I would definitely try to get this palette again if I were to lose it. Now, it is kind of hard to get the Sweet Shop series at all because they're discontinued. BH Cosmetics was kind of floating around there for a while. Nobody knew what was going on, and the Sweet Shop series were so loved. Everybody was completely enamored with this collection, and once I got my hands on one, I totally understood why. It's phenomenal formula. It's beautifully performing, beautifully building, beautifully blending. Even though most of these are monochromatic, they're a nice assortment of colors within that same shade, and you have different tones. You know, like this side is a lot more orangey, and then over here we have sort of coral, and then a soft orangey brown. Then we have shimmers. It is done so beautifully well. I can link for you the video where I used this one, and I just love it. It's beautiful. So yeah, even though it's kind of hard to get my hands on, and by the way, $10 on Poshmark. $10. You can't find these hardly ever, and if you do, they're never listed affordably. $10. I win. Yes, if I were to lose this palette, and if I could find it again for a reasonable price, I would definitely repurchase this one. All right, she pulled out the Love Notes palette from Beauty Bay. At the time of this filming, I have this palette list for sale. By the time you guys watch the video, it might be gone already, I don't know. But for the time being, it is in my collection. This is the Love Notes palette from Beauty Bay. It was released as 2022's Valentine's Day launch, and it is a really pretty palette. It performs just like every Beauty Bay shadow I expect. It performs nicely. The deepest 3 colors don't build amazingly on top of other shadows, so if you want to incorporate those colors in your look, I recommend starting with them and then building out lighter from there. I do like this palette for the variety of shimmers. Each shimmer is different, works with a couple of the colors around it, and none of them are repetitive. Like, you don't have one shimmer that looks the same as another one. They're all different enough that they make sense being in the palette. This is another palette that was featured in my I Love You But video, where I like it, but, you know? And the but for this palette is that I feel it's got a lot of redundant shades. These two, this collection of pinks, and this whole row of purples. I think it could have either been done smaller or have some blues added in, some light periwinkle and sky blues. They would have complemented all the shades within the palette and made it a little bit more interesting and not quite as repetitive. This is really good quality overall. Not the best, but generally I do like Beauty Bay. I especially like their shimmers, they're nice. And the mattes are usually quite good too. I have dipped into this palette quite frequently when I want like a light purple shadow because it's got 4 of them. But I would say no. If I were to lose this palette, I would not buy it again. In fact, I'm hoping to sell this one. It's nice, but I just think it's unnecessary in my collection at this point. Oh, the next palette she picked out, the Solomone 2 eyeshadow palette from Udenzai. This one is kind of a given. Like, there's no question on earth that if I were to lose this palette, I wouldn't try to grab it up again as quickly as humanly possible. This is one of the newest palettes in my collection, and it is totally gorgeous. It's one of the few palettes that I've bought new. It's one of the few palettes that I've bought on launch. I love this color story. This is everything that I would want a color story to be. Blue, green, pink, purple, orange, coral, got a couple deepening shades, several light shades, lots of medium tones, lots of great mattes that you can use to create a dynamic, fun, interesting, and varied look, and then shimmers that work with everything. We've got shimmers within each of those basic color families, and it's Udenzai, it's incredible quality, the packaging is everything. Yeah, it's come on, yes. If I were to lose this palette, absolutely 1,000,000% definitely want to buy it again. Another palette that she pulled out, at the time of this filming, you guys don't even know that I have this palette. It arrived in my mail yesterday. Another Sweet Shop palette, because once I experienced the amazing quality of the Orange Sorbet palette, and I saw this one also listed on Poshmark for $10, I was all over it. All over it. Actually, technically it was listed for $20, but I offered 10 and she accepted. I'm like, yes, okay. This is the Pistachio palette. I think this one's amazing. This is actually the palette that caught my eye at the very first when it comes to the Sweet Shop palettes. I wanted the Pistachio. The reason I waited so long to even try to get it was because, first off, I knew they were hard to find. You almost never saw them listed on the secondhand sites. And then I started to kind of build my green eyeshadow collection over time. I've got Dirty Martini from Glamlight, Oceanic from Ace Beauté, I've got the Hella palette from Udenzai, I have a couple different tones of green from ColourPop. Didn't really need more green eyeshadow. But when I realized how good the Orange Sorbet was, I was thinking, okay, you can't, like, this series was so well reviewed, I don't think you can go wrong. And the Pistachio specifically was even harder to find than the rest. It seems like Pistachio and Cherry on Top were the favorites overall. Those are the ones you almost never see on Poshmark and Mercari. And then the one that you always see is either bubblegum or cotton candies. So the pink, purple, or the blues. But this one rarely comes up. Once in a while you see it and it's usually priced very high. Again, seller had it listed for 20. I offered 10 and she accepted my offer and I was super excited. So I haven't actually tried it yet, technically, because it just arrived. However, I can pretty confidently say that if it were to get lost, I would do my best to replace it. She also pulled out the Age of Opulence palette from Beauty Bay. This palette is the source of some contention in my world. I made a video, I can card it above for you, where I was talking about palettes with my least favorite packaging, and this was the one that I had so many thoughts on, so much to say about this palette's packaging. And then I made some historical faux pas and then made a correction video where I was addressing those because one of my subscribers was kind enough to be like, you know, this was a great idea, but you really got some of these timeline areas messed up. Anyway, it was a whole thing. This is the Age of Opulence palette from Beauty Bay, and I love this color story. I always say that this color story, to me, is like New Year's Eve in a palette. The beautiful, deep, very rich and pigmented purples, blues, and then all these different shimmers in gold tones, brownish, bronzy, more yellow. This is more of a vintage orangey kind of gold. We have a blue shimmer to work with the blues, a purple shimmer to work with the purples, a blurple shimmer to work with either, a lovely pinky sort of peach kind of shimmer over here, a couple of neutral shades, a black, very light tones. This palette really is quite lovely. I was super excited when I got it. It's another one that I got not quite on launch, but I think pretty close to being launched. But I have to say that if it were to be lost from my collection, I probably would not try to buy it again. The reason I say that is because at this point in my eyeshadow journey, I have pretty well nailed down my style, and my style doesn't include a lot of dark blues and purples. I love dark blues and purples. I love blue and purple together. It's one of my favorite combinations. But with my own skin tone, which is like a light medium and blue undertones, the dark blues and purples just make me look tired, really worn out, weary, fatigued. Choose your adjective. That's how I look when I wear them, unless I'm extremely careful and I have a lot of lighter colors and tones in my inner corner. If you see more recent videos where I'm wearing blue eyeshadows, which I do love, I almost always have much lighter tones at the inner corner because it livens up the center of the face and then moves to drama at the outset. But if I bring those darker colors all over my lid, it's a mistake. It's just not good for me. So I think this palette's beautiful and it has performed really well for me. Even the really dark mattes, which with Beauty Bay tend, you kind of need to use them first. As long as I follow that rule, I don't have any problems with this palette, but it's not the right color scheme for me anymore. I may actually declutter this one at some point because I find it's not really getting used in my collection. I mean, I know the colors that are in here, so if I'm doing a look and I want a super deep purple or blue, I know where to go. But my collection has also grown and become more customized to my preferences at this point, so I can probably find those shades that I need in other palettes that have a better general offering for me. So I'm a little pained to say it, but if I were to lose this from my collection, I do not think I would repurchase. The 9th palette my daughter pulled out was the Michaela palette from Glamlight. I knew she liked this one. I asked her if she was just pulling out palettes that she knew I liked because that would be a really boring video. And she goes, no, I'm pulling out palettes that I like. I don't know which ones you like. With all the sass of a 10-year-old. Okay, here is the Michaela palette from Glamlight. This is a big palette. It's got a lot of color options. I find it's kind of neutral and then purple heavy, and I really like a lot of these other colors, the greens, the pinks, the yellowy blues, and over here we got a lot of different things. I find that within this palette, I don't really use the top 2 rows, and so they're a little bit of a waste for me. I've considered selling this one, but I do regularly reach into it to get, a bright yellow, which I don't have anywhere else, or this particular shade of mint, which even though I have the Mint to Be palette from ColourPop, doesn't include this shade. It's kind of a grassy mint combo. It's not true mint, it's just a very minty grass. Anyway, I don't know, I'm really torn on this one. I'm really torn. One of my subscribers asked me in a different video what made me choose the Michaela palette over the Ice Cream Dream palette from Glamlight. And I basically said Michaela had fewer pastels and more deep tones, which I know I like. At this point, maybe I would choose Ice Cream Dream because I don't have a great pastel palette anymore, and I do have a lot of deeper, more interesting tones elsewhere throughout my collection. I don't know. I think right now I'll say if it were to be lost from my collection, I would probably not purchase it again because those top 2 rows don't get used, and because I think that a lot of these shades are represented elsewhere within my collection, and I also don't really like very big palettes. This one's not huge, but it's just a little bit bigger than I like. I like something a little smaller and a bit more thoughtfully curated. It's a great palette though. I have nothing bad to say. Honestly, I have nothing bad to say about any of these palettes. It's simply a matter of personal preference and what my collection looks like at this point. So if I lost it, I would probably not repurchase. And to end out this video, my daughter chose the Hummingbird palette from Udenzai. She probably knew that this one was going to be an easy one for me as well. Definitely yes. Yes, all the way. This is limited edition, so you can't get it anymore anyway unless you find it on a discount site. Usually they're outrageously priced, not even kidding, $190 for one of the 3 original Legendary Diversa palettes, which was this one, the Red Dragon from Judy, and Giant Wolves from Annette. So you can't really get your hands on them anyway unless you're willing to wait and pay an exorbitant amount of money. I'm willing to do the first, but not the second. So this is a really beautiful palette. It's been one of my favorites from the beginning, like from when I first got it, because it has all these hyper pigmented, super beautiful shades. They're stunning. They're so vibrant, and the color story is not perhaps the best if you want to just do one look from this palette. Can be done. I have a couple videos where I do one look using only this palette. One of those videos I like better than the other. And it is a challenge to say, okay, well, there are only 5 mattes here, so what can I do and which shimmer do I want to play with? But this is a beautiful selection of shimmers that you can use to complement a different look. So even if you don't want to work only within this palette, you can take one of these shimmer shadows and throw them in with something else. Beautiful, beautiful look. I love Oud Inside. They're my favorite brand, I think. I love the performance of this palette. I love the colors, the vibrance. Yes, 100% yes. If I lost this palette, I would try, within my realm of possibility, I would try to repurchase it. So there you go. If I lost these palettes, would I buy them again? Some yeses, some nos. Lots of fun to go through my palettes and just have fun with these little games. Thank you very much for hanging out with me. I hope you liked the video. Remember to check out this eye look. I'll link it below for you. Remember to like and subscribe if you want to see more content. And until I see you in my next video, I hope you have a lovely day. Bye. Did she like it?
Yeah, she thought it was so pretty.
It is pretty. You did a great job.